Hello everyone, today I want to talk about a global poll showing that China's image has risen to the top in the world, surpassing the United States for the first time. Additionally, President Trump boasts about tariffs on China while in office, but the economic memorandum released by the White House doesn't even dare to mention it. Trump really seems like a schoolboy. If no one keeps an eye on him for a day, he keeps telling lies. April 29th marked a significant day as Trump celebrated his 100th day in office. At a commemorative rally held in Macomb County, Michigan, Trump stood in front of a butter-yellow backdrop emblazoned with Golden Era and spent a full 90 minutes boasting, claiming this was the most successful first 100 days of any U.S. administration. Trump spent a significant portion of the time touting his so-called achievements in immigration and tariff policies, at one point claiming he had already ended inflation. He also made a strong effort to harshly criticize former President Biden, Federal Reserve Chairman Powell, and others. On the topic of tariffs, Trump once again disregarded the facts and started making grandiose statements. He said that countries, including China, are scrambling to negotiate trade agreements with the United States to avoid tariffs. In fact, China has repeatedly and formally refuted this, denying that China and the US have started tariff negotiations. Yet Trump unabashedly claimed on stage that we are now respected all over the world. Countries from all over the world come to see your president. They come from India, from France, from Spain, and yes, they also come from China. They rush from all directions to meet your president, wanting to make deals. Trump really seems to be under some illusion, thinking that Chinese officials have come to see him. Trump even glorified the tariffs on China as a historic move while on stage. He accused China of stealing American jobs. He said no country has taken more American jobs than China. Trump also added that a trade agreement with China is imminent, and it will be a fair agreement. The tensions surrounding tariffs do not mean that the US and China cannot get along. Our relationship with China is quite good. It's important to note that Trump was speaking unilaterally on stage, speaking freely without needing to explain to reporters. In his speech, Trump frequently mentioned tariffs, but US government departments seem to find the term quite sensitive. It was suspected to be omitted in the US government's 100-day achievement showcase. On April 29th, the White House website released a 100-day economic memorandum written by the White House Council of Economic Advisers, which did not mention reciprocal tariffs at all. Not even the word tariff appeared. This memorandum focused on employment and inflation statistics, merely criticizing the previous Biden administration. The memorandum claims that since Trump took office in January this year, the US has added a total of 345,000 jobs, with 9,000 of them being non-employment positions, and over 54% of the new jobs coming from the private sector. The document deliberately emphasizes that compared to the last 2 years of the Biden administration, this is undoubtedly a significant improvement. At that time, 43,000 of the new jobs were concentrated in the government and related departments. However, the data in this memorandum has been questioned from multiple sides, with the document claiming that only 15,000 federal government positions were cut. However, a report released earlier by CNN stated that the Trump administration's actions to cut federal departments actually affected nearly 120,000 government employees. On the same day, the US Treasury Department released a press release outlining the achievements of the Trump administration's first 100 days, with very few mentions of tariffs. The Treasury's press release was identical to the White House memorandum, also not directly addressing the situation of reciprocal tariffs, but rather emphasizing deregulation, job creation, and the reduction of federal positions, described even more briefly. While this official document downplayed tariffs during the significant event of the first 100 days in office, Trump did not dare to directly face the reporters. However, there was one person who did come out to meet the press. That very morning, US Treasury Secretary Bessent attended a White House press briefing, along with White House Press Secretary Reuter. The two heavily exaggerated the so-called influence and effectiveness of Trump's tariff policy on the international stage. Reuter, however, praised that Trump's strong tariff policy successfully ended the era of economic surrender for the United States. They claimed that 100 countries have already actively sought to engage in dialogue with the United States, hoping to offer more favorable conditions for the US and its people. But when reporters directly asked whether China was negotiating with the US on tariff issues and why Trump's statements contradicted the official Chinese statements, Treasury Secretary Bessent chose to be vague. He shifted the topic and said that according to the data, the trade war would cause millions of people in China to lose their jobs. Even if tariffs are reduced, 5 million people in China would still lose their jobs. He claimed that China is eager to reach an agreement with the United States. Let's first make a brief summary. First, Trump continues to boast unilaterally on stage extolling the virtues of tariffs and making grand claims that an agreement with China is imminent. Second, the 100-day economic memorandum written by the White House Council of Economic Advisers does not mention reciprocal tariffs at all. Public opinion suggests that the US government also knows that the reckless tariffs will only have negative effects on the American economy. Third, Treasury Secretary Bessent avoided discussing whether the US and China had meetings about tariffs, only stating that the trade war would cause 10 million people in China to lose their jobs. In fact, China hasn't even started cutting interest rates, so one can imagine how significant the impact of the trade war on China really is. China originally budgeted a toolbox with many strategies, but since they haven't been implemented yet, it shows that Trump's tariff war is actually quite ineffective. The Chinese have given Trump a nickname, calling him Chuan Jiangguo. It's actually hard to imagine that in just 100 days of Trump's administration, he has made such a significant contribution to China. The Canadian election just ended, and it seems that the ruling Liberal Party, under Prime Minister Trudeau's leadership, leaned towards Trump, causing a sharp decline in public support. However, Carney, who succeeded him, picked up the hot mess, taking advantage of the momentum as Trump pressured Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. By firmly countering Trump, he rallied Canadians against a common adversary, regaining support for the Liberal Party, leading to Carney's victory. This dramatic turn of events might already be visible in the change of Canadians' coffee buying habits. Recently, Canadians have been very resentful towards the United States, renaming American coffee as Canadian coffee, boycotting American Netflix and Disney, cancelling travel plans to the US, and even selling vacation properties they own in the US. I believe Canadians are now beginning to understand that when Trudeau closely followed the US in imposing a 100% import tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, it was a completely foolish act. Why follow the US so closely? The destructive impact of Trump can already be seen from the public opinion polls in various countries. According to a recent survey released by the research company Ipsos, which involved 20,000 adults from 29 countries, the percentage of global respondents who believe the US has a generally positive role in world affairs has sharply dropped by 13 percentage points from 59% 6 months ago to 46%. In contrast, in the same report, China has surpassed the US for the first time. 6 months ago, only 39% of respondents believed that China had a generally positive role in world affairs, but this has now surged to 49%, surpassing the US to become the world's number one. It is noteworthy that this survey was conducted from March 21st to April 4th, while Trump only began imposing the extremely outrageous tariffs worth billions on April 2nd. However, the survey could not fully reflect the subsequent global public sentiment. If the same survey were conducted now, the percentage by which China leads the US would be even higher. American political scientist Joseph Nye proposed the concept of soft power. Nye was once the US Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, well versed in America's global manipulation techniques, and is considered to have shown that since the Cold War, the US has led the world not only through military and economic hard power, but also by using soft power to win over the world. The US possesses enviable scientific research capabilities, has long championed a free and diverse lifestyle, and exports American pop culture to the world. These are the true sources of America's strength. However, within 100 days of taking office, Trump completely destroyed America's soft power. In the eyes of the world, not only has America not become greater, but American goods and services, and even its culture, have become like street rats, despised amid public resentment. Because the US bullies even its close friends. In the aforementioned survey, among the 29 countries interviewed, those with a better impression of the US are actually developing countries in South America or Asia. They believe that in countries where fewer than 40% of people think the US has a positive role in the world, these are actually America's close allies, including the UK, Italy, Ireland, Australia, Spain, France, Germany, Belgium, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Canada. In this tariff war, Trump is calling on countries around the world to negotiate with him to kiss his backside. When countries around the world are both shocked and angry in the face of bullying, feeling helpless, China chose to stand up to the US by imposing tariffs in return. China has become a pioneer in resisting US hegemony globally, mobilizing countries in the global south to stand against the US. Some European diplomats have privately expressed great admiration for China's strong resistance to US tariff bullying, believing that only China has the courage to do so. After China stood up to resist, other countries adopted a wait-and-see attitude and used delaying tactics when negotiating with the US. They are afraid to provoke the US by not negotiating, but when they do negotiate, they don't make specific counteroffers, making the talks as if they never happened. The international community is like a forest, where not only hard power is compared, but also soft power. It's not just about comparing the strength of nations, but also the leadership of national leaders, and the resilience of their citizens. In this competition of soft power, China has now gained the upper hand.